Hi, my name is Nick Shell, and you've never seen me in a video ever before. You've never heard of me. But all I ever talk about on this channel is hair loss. And that's what we're going to talk about today. With that being said, my newest current favorite show right now to watch, and I don't have much time to watch TV, but when I do, what's it called? Black Mirror. Black Mirror is the name of it. And it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. It's got 3 seasons. The episodes are about an hour long, and they're basically, it's like watching a movie every time. It's a different cast and a different situation every time, but instead of, waiting for it to come out in the theater and it'd be 90 minutes, it's only 60 minutes long, and it's a show about the dark side of modern technology meeting the dark side of humanity. So it's like, it's a scary show in a way, but there's no ghosts or demons or monsters or vampires or whatever. It's modern technology and the dark side of humanity being what's so scary about these episodes. And so one of the themes that I've seen in a couple of these episodes is talking about how basically in the future, if we were able to weed out certain undesirable traits as human beings. So you obviously know where I'm going with this. What if in the future we just did away with the hair loss gene? Now this isn't an actual episode, but what I'm describing could easily be the premise of one of these Black Mirror episodes on Netflix. So for example, you know what? We don't have to be bald anymore. We can be the last generation that's balding, because you know what? From now on, when we procreate, we will simply get rid of those cells that are going to go bald, and it won't be for too long that we can just get rid of that race. And if this were a Black Mirror episode, then it would be that the government would control this, and they would decide which traits would ultimately be able to pass. But if you're short, you wouldn't be able to make the cut. If you are going to go bald, you wouldn't be able to cut. If you have any kind of physical or mental disability, and they could see that, basically what I'm getting at is that either that you'd be aborted, or, and when we think abortion, we think of long term, but I mean, the moment conception happens, you see these little cells right here? Well, that cell is going to have Down syndrome, so let's go ahead and eliminate that, which again is abortion. But my point is, that's the kind of stuff this show would be about. So with that same theory, forget about modern technology, and forget about, manipulating genes in a way that those weaker genes don't show up and don't become human beings that are born outside of a womb. No, you know me. Despite all my theatrics, I am actually a conservative Christian, and I'm extremely, extremely saddened by the thought of abortion. I really am. It's so troubling. But I also understand too, it's not just that abortion is awful. It's that humanity gets themselves in these situations where they think that there's no other option but to terminate a pregnancy, which to me, if you don't terminate it, it becomes a human life. And if you want to see a comedy bit about abortion, Louis C.K. on Netflix, his special 2017, my wife and I actually saw him perform it live here in Nashville. But his opening thing is about abortion. And he basically makes fun of both sides, saying, how do I say it? He talks about how both sides make light of abortion in their own ways. That if you're okay with abortion, it's basically like, here's just some flesh. It's no different than, going to the bathroom and pooping it out, And then he talks about how people who are very much against abortion make light of it, and the fact that they care so much about an unborn fetus, but then they are not taking care of people here that are poor and don't have food to eat and don't have education. What about that life after it goes on? So great point, very mature, very intelligent. I love Louis C.K. He is my favorite comedian. And Patton Oswalt's probably second. But it's very interesting though, in a future version where we could just weed out the balding gene. But at what cost? And does that mean, are we aborting cells that have already formed to pass for a positive pregnancy test. Okay? Now that's all deep and dark, all that, the first 5 minutes of this video. Here's how I want to close it. What if, forget about science, forget about technology. What if we as a human race said, you know what? I don't want to go bald, but I have to. I don't have a choice unless I want to get a hair transplant procedure. But more importantly, why don't I only procreate to make sure that I don't have balding offspring? Now, imagine, and this tells you something about what the world really feels about balding. And you probably beat me to the punchline, but here it is. Okay? What if I, as a man, had decided, you know what? I know that I've got the balding gene, but I don't want to have kids that have it. So if I have a son, I don't want to have to worry about it. If I have a daughter, I don't want her to have kids that ends up having the balding gene and have a bald son herself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to marry someone who I know doesn't have that gene. I'm going to marry an Asian. I'm going to marry a Japanese girl because Asian men tend not to lose their hair. And then as I'm dating her, I'm saying, okay, let me look at pictures of her father, her grandfather, her brothers. Yep, none of them lose their hair. Okay, so yay, I'm gonna create offspring that don't have the balding gene. Uh-oh. But what's the problem with this story? I've got the balding gene. So if she was just as passionate about that, well, what good is that for her if she's trying to have offspring? Because she's marrying someone who definitely has the gene. So what that would mean is, in theory, what, people are only going to procreate if they don't have the balding gene? So people like me lose the right to procreate because I've got the gene to go bald. So it's just funny because it's like, I think the ultimate fundamental issue, what I really want to get at is this. Women continue to procreate with men who have the balding gene. Not only is the fact that they're often procreating with men who have already gone bald at age 27, and they're okay with that, but they're also okay with carrying on that gene. My point is this. If we as a human race truly cared about hair loss, we wouldn't procreate. We wouldn't keep this problem going. We ourselves have the DNA for this, and we're making this continue to happen. Just like eyesight or whatever other kind of things there are. So, obviously, mankind on their own is not going to stop procreating. So, if they have got the balding gene, just to keep other people from being bald, right? We're not going to leave it up to the people who have the no balding gene to procreate, and the rest of us are just out, right? That's never going to happen. So the only thing that could ever happen in the likeness of these Black Mirror episodes of Netflix is that down the road technology would determine this, and that ultimately it would get really murky as far as, is this technically abortion? Are we gene splicing? What are we doing? We're playing God in order to get rid of the balding gene. So those are things that, especially as I'm watching Black Mirror, it's made me think about. And I think that we should discuss it. Would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to leave a comment? And let's just talk about this more. Not only has mankind not got rid of the balding gene by not breeding that way, but what about in the future with science? I'm curious.